This is a transposition of race identity look, right? Angelic humans look much more actually angelic. We're much taller. We actually have 6 appendages, 2 thumbs, an extra toe, and we're much taller and more fine-boned and that kind of thing. We come in all colors, right? All the skin colors, they were all, created there to be first. There are people that were much more reptilian, that were in on the bioregenesis or helping the DNA to get its ascension codes back projects. So now you have like people that are part human and part reptilian, part human, part Anunnaki, part human, part Draconian. Oh, it's just like Club Universe here, and that's okay if we weren't all fighting and trying to kill each other. Because if you look at what is happening, what has been happening, our history on this planet, even the part we know, everybody's been trying to kill everybody else to get the land out from under them, or to take control of their power and disempower them. It's been horrible. And this has been about race groups that hated each other, right? Okay, so you have 6 different races that are coming in for bioregenesis, and if you take them back to their home stations, wherever their ET places are that they're from, they hate each other. This one hates that one, and that one hates this one. Oh boy. And the agreement is nobody's going to hate each other. We're all going to be nice. We're all going to do the Christic thing here and learn to heal and let that go. And we're going to get our gene codes back. Yes, the good thought. Didn't work that easy because the others raided. As soon as some of their own that defected and came to get the healing of the gene codes, the parent races they came out of started coming in and messing with them and trying to get the human gene codes because the human gene codes are priceless. They had the Diamond Sun DNA, minimum 12 strand. Some of them had up to 48 strands, but they didn't see those very often on the planet. So it has been a fiasco down here, but the Earth allowed this to happen. The Earth, as a being, allowed as long as time as possible. It allowed itself to be pulled into fall, but it will take the path of Kali Rama step back. It will not let itself be used and taken as food into the black hole system. So Earth is cooperating with us. So we're at an amazing point, is what all this is about, an amazing point in human history, but also in galactic history. And the decisions we make now, still, even though there's these huge influences that do interrupt our free use of all of our abilities to do whatever the heck we want and manifest anything we want. Yeah, we're dealing with a planetary field here that's a lot stronger than our individual fields are. So we have free will within the parameters of the framework we're in. But there are still choices we can make. We can still choose which path we want to be on and take the steps that are a part of that path. There are things to do if you don't want your DNA to go 55 Metatronic in December of 2012. They're not that hard. There are some things you need to learn. There are some things you need to learn to do with your light body. You need to know what the hell a light body is. You need to know some of these structures. Yeah, you don't have to know every part and label every part. There's not a test at the end of it as far as, regurgitate the information. It's about getting the activations, getting your body healed enough to support your decision of the path you want to be on.
It's like heart-wrenching because they think they're evolved spiritual beings, and maybe they were at one time or whatever,
right?
Or in other dimensions they are, but you could just see that they've got no clue what they're dealing with.
This is how Atlantis got to be what it was. It's that clueless naivety with a touch of arrogance added.
Yes.
That it's a lethal combination.
You would think those would be an oxymoron.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah, like they should repel like oil and water.
How could one happen with the other simultaneously? But actually, it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you know it all.
I mean, spiritual arrogance is a fascinating topic. That it's like a disease that goes throughout the community, and it's created a lot of problems with humans in between personal relationships, et cetera, and it comes in the strangest of guises. In other words, sometimes it looks like humility, but it's not. That's some of the most sort of insidious aspects of it. When it looks, oh my God, they're so humble and they're so sweet and this and that and like they're the most diabolical character, and yet they don't even know it. This is where, and so you almost, it's funny because you can't get mad at them because they don't realize what they're doing. At least that's been my dilemma, with some of these people, and I my heart goes out to them because there's a being there who thinks they're doing the good thing.
And probably more than one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Well, the other ones don't think they're doing the good thing. They know they're not, but they're doing a good job. Anyway.
Is it plugged in?
Yeah, I'm good here. We're all hooked up. Okay, so let's begin again.
All right, we're on to a part now. We were talking about the distortions in the planetary grids. I'll put this on just to start that sequence, actually. This is just a little, both pictures put in one, where it shows the natural plane of a solar system the way it should be with the solar symbiosis, and it shows the twisted mess that our solar system is in, and up here shows the twisted mess that our planet is in as far as the grids and those things. Now, this information is built on understanding the base structures of what the planes are supposed to look like. We talked about the larger structures that were maps of the cosmos that showed the the interactive gate maps built on the Cathara grid and all of that. We worked our way down through the probability structures and the galaxy and everything, got down to here. The next thing we're going to look at that's key to where, not only where we are, but where we're going, is part of the structures that have to do with the Earth planes themselves. If you take one stellar body, be it the sun or a star or the Earth, there's a set of organic planes that are created, and they're based on, the next one, they're based on a template that looks like this. Now again, we're talking spheres within spheres as opposed to just flat things right on two-dimensional paper. This is called a Partie body template, or a Partie body. It is the dark matter body. This is the part that science plays with the idea of dark matter because they can see something creating an effect, but there's nothing that's here in matter that is creating that effect, so they call the matter that you can't see that's obviously affecting that the dark matter. There is actually a substance that is called dark matter. It differs in certain qualities from the matter that you can see, and there are templates built on it. They occur in a certain stage of the creation process, and they're all interconnected with the other structures we've seen. The dark matter template is actually the elemental command template. It is where things like atoms actually first start and where they're actually manufactured before they come into materialized form. And there is in the natural organic structures, the dark matter template has what are called 15 gelesic rings. They're called hydrogelesic rings. So you've got the rings are the spaces between the lines, and the bands in between the gelesic rings are called crystal spans. Or it depends on what level are these spans or rings or what, because we got rings and spans and a different level of manifestation. They're called shields and fields. So you can think of it in terms of the fields of the rings and the shields of the crystal structures around them. This template becomes important in understanding when a materialized body, such as the planet, because this would be the point that would correspond to the planet's core, and there would be certain dynamics in that core of the template that would materialize in atoms and in atomic structure as the core of the physical planet. The core has what is called a prana seed in it, and we had this whole long series of graphs explaining how it got there, how that grows and becomes what the template becomes what it is, and the purpose of the prana seed. The prana seed is supposed to open and close and spark when it does, which generates quantum, but also allows a direct flow of living energy between the dark matter template and the light body, spirit body, and atomic body structure. And that flow keeps the circulation going. When the prana seed, when something goes wrong with the prana seed and it is forced to close, it actually locks up, and that blocks the flow of energy into the dark matter template, and that starts what's called the Bardo process, or the death process, where ring by ring of the matter starts to pull away from the dark matter template, which means it starts to lose its core form-holding blueprint. Now, the sun has just gone through that on the 25th of March of 2007. And so it's in the process of having its rings pull away. The rings start pulling away from the inside, going outward. And I forget what ring we're on now, ring 3 or something like that. Something. 2022 is ring 15, and that finally pulls. There is a gamma burst that comes from the core every time a ring fully releases. So far, they haven't done anything where, solar flaring or anything. That could change. When it comes to a planet, this becomes very interesting, because in this template, and we'll see what it looks like in relation to the planet in a minute, but in this template, those 15 gelesic rings are broken up into, or form into sets of 3, and each one of those is a is considered a plane. All right, so there are 5 planes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in this 15 ring structure, right? And each of the planes has 3 geodesic rings to it. This becomes important when we start to look at planet structure. When we look at the planet, and if you took a cross section, you have the core of the planet, then you have the mantle levels, and then you have the crust, then you have the atmosphere, and all the stuff that goes up to the magnetosphere, right? This template is actually the key to understanding what is where. And there's some very interesting facts that go with each of these geodesic areas, because certain areas have certain characteristics, not only of matter, like certain areas are liquid. That's why we have like liquid core. There are certain bands, number 4, 5, and 6, will actually be liquid aquifers. They're called aquifers. And there are, when we see this in relation to the planet, we're looking at just one dimensional level of one now. Each dimension, for example, a 3-dimensional planet like Earth, it actually has dimension 1, dimension 2, dimension 3, and what is called its density template, or its density body, which would be the catheric level. So there's actually 4 levels. It would be 4 embedded templates. One, like if you take 1 and then times it by 2, that would be the next size, times it by 2, the next size. It shows you all these overlapping rings, and in those, it actually gives you a map. If you take a cross-section of it, it gives you a map from the core going all the way up into the atmosphere of what is where, what energies it's composed of, and what doorways exist where, because there are pass-throughs that exist in certain parts of this. There also gives you, once you have the base structure of that, and you're on a planet that has mutations like this one does, with the twisted, the axis is twisted, the Merkaba fields are all a mess, that will show in the template, in the light and matter body template that forms, where the natural structures will have impediments in them that shouldn't be there, such as the net fields that we've talked about. So there are when we see this in terms of the planet, you'll see this structure, but times 4, where there'll be 4 of these, one, the next one bigger, the next one bigger, and then times 2, till we have 4 of them together, and that will give the planetary template of the planes. So in 1-dimensional level, you have the 15 layers, or 15 rings, and which make up 5 planes. So if you have 5 times 4, that's 20 planes. You'll have 20 planes in 1 density level of a planetary system. This becomes important because in certain areas in between these planes, there are platforms of consciousness that can be activated and are being activated that will allow for safe zone spaces. So eventually those places will actually open, and there will be an interface of planes between here and the hosting systems that we're going into, where eventually we will be able to walk through certain grids, and if your DNA is keyed to it, you will be able to see the other reality field and literally walk out of this one and into that one. And that is what we're aiming for. What we get out of understanding the base template of the Partie dark matter template is we can first see how, by taking a cross section of it, this is still just 1-dimensional level of it, but just by taking from here to here, wherever one of those crystal bands, right, crosses the vertical center line, draw a straight line over from it, and it gives you the vertical cross section. So from a spherical map, you can draw a vertical map, which means starting from the core, going up, you can see what's where at what bands. This becomes helpful once we have it all embedded into the 4 together, so we can actually see what's interfacing where. And there's some fascinating things that are up in our skies, around besides the Van Allen belts. Because we know where the Van Allen belts are, and I haven't even looked up how far up they are, but that's known by science, right? The inner and the outer belts and the gap between. We can judge the distance of how far up what is, as far as doorways and those kind of things, because the Van Allen belts give us an actual, physically verifiable location to judge the rest. Is it up above it? Is that kind of thing. So these spherical maps, which we're in the process of working on. In fact, we're going to be doing more of those in this workshop than we have ever before, really. And the vertical maps, these are the keys to, if you're going to move into ascension, where's the first place you're going to go? First, you're going to have to know how to get out of here. All right, I found a Stargate, now what? Right? Where am I aiming for? People do astral projection all the time. Half the time, most of the time, they're going down wormholes and don't know it. That is not ascension. They are not stargates. Now, there are ways you can use the facilities that we have organically. We have the organic ability to project out of body, and eventually we can get our DNA up to where we can actually take the body with us. But you want to know where you're going first. There are certain planes that are totally corrupted. There are certain planes that people, when they have, like, say, a natural death here, get stuck in because of the distortions in the light body structure of the planet. So when we start to see the planes, the vertical maps, we'll look at the spherical one in a minute. The vertical maps look like this, which is that cross section, but this is after putting 4 of those layers together. So you see where each of the Jalizic rings overlay, and so you have 20 dimensions interfacing. So you'd have the core, and these are the different things going all the way up. There are certain areas that interface directly, because we talked about before how this Earth has been a hot spot for all sorts of warring type of activity, because its relationship in relation to the galactic drama, where the star planet called Eartha in M31 Andromeda is directly linked to the host star that Earth was seeded into when it came back out, when it was seeded back out in the Amenti rescue mission, which was Ashayana. So you have Earth, Ashayana, and they connect through the gates directly into Andromeda. So they were actually, Earth was holding the galactic host for the Milky Way galaxy. That's why it's been never peaceful here. Terra was doing the same thing before it fell. So anyway, these up here, these upper planes that correspond with different layers, I'm not going to read every layer right now, but this stuff is out there, and it's in various different workshops actually. It shows you where the interfaces are, where up in our skies that interface directly with M31, where they are crossover points. There are certain things called aurora platforms that are in between, that are platforms that go through that space that I had mentioned. It's called the aurora continuum, that is between the outer domain radons and the middle domain edons, right? It's that transharmonic space. And the aurora platforms are there, and they are beginning to be activated now, because they will allow for a host that allow for ascension going through, instead of, because you can't go vertical anymore, because the gates up above have fallen. The Terran gates have fallen in the Pleiades system, and the gates up above that, the Gaian gates in the density 3 system, have fallen. This matrix is falling, and you can't go vertical because of that unless you want to end up in a fall system. So knowing where the plane structures are in our literally right here at home, this we don't have to go all the way out into the middle of the galaxy to find. It's right here, right here on our own planet with us. There are certain interface points where we have the liquid aquifers, we have the crystal core, then there's something called the flame field, which is like a thermal vapor. Then there's a void space, then there are the aquifers. And whenever you see the aquifers, they come in at the 4th, 5th, and 6th Jalizic layer in those templates. So they'll appear a couple times because you've got 4 of those templates now, right? So these are the deepest aquifers here. All of the aquifers will have these passageways, these natural passageways that are partially in the aquifer and partially in the lower mantle level above it. So there are doorways deep down there that you can learn to actually project through and eventually actually take your physical body through. There are what they call biomes in the middle mantle layer, and they are the crystal temples, and there are people who live there at certain angular rotation of particle spin. So we're not as alone on this planet as we think. There are negative aspects to some of these as well. They're not all positive, but fortunately there's a lot of positive ones. So up here, when we get up into the atmospheric ones, there are levels of the atmosphere, and again we have where the Van Allen belts are, so you can tell which planes are in relation to where the Van Allens are, that kind of thing. So these are the projection maps. If we're going to learn how to first bilocate and then learn how to actually translocate and take our body somewhere, it's helpful to know where the heck we're putting it. Because when we get to the point where we can do those things, it isn't going to be like, hop in a taxi and say, hey, take me to plane 4 over there, right? It's going to be literally a visualization process, and at the speed of thought, your fields activate and bang, zoom, you're there. That's how fast you would actually go through the gate systems. You wouldn't go, okay, now I'm going to step in the elevator and I'm going in the gate. It doesn't work that way. It's instantaneous and moving at the speed of thought. So anyway, the planes maps are very helpful. They're going to become more helpful as we
Okay, what about
move
the
into
Great Pyramid? Because it contains aquifer, as you're calling it. There's a liquid part of it in which you can supposedly ascend through, and they used to use it as an ascension chamber.
I used to use it as a wormhole chamber. I
Okay.
remember that pit, the alligator pit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there more than one, though,
Yes.
in the Great Pyramid?
In the Great Pyramid, I'm not sure. I remember a big one. I just have like pieces of the cellular memory from times when I was there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was a female that hung around there on occasion until they killed me. I do have incarnational memory with that. It's not one of my favorite places. Actually, the real hot spot they haven't figured out yet is Saqqara.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's actually more under there, but there are direct portals under Giza. You know, Gate 4 is in the Giza complex, and it used to. There was always a fight over that one. It was always
one of the Amenti gates?
Oh
Or-
yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
So it is now interfered with.
Oh yeah.
And has been for how long?
Forever. It's actually where they moved the Ark of the Covenant passage in when around 9558 BC period, when the final islands of the Atlantean continent had gone under. That's where the Ark of the Covenant used to come down. That's a portal passage that goes from here all the way up to Andromeda. And they literally shifted it into Giza. And then, of course, Giza became a real hot spot to try to have the other guys take it away from you and use it for wormholes, which there was always fights over it. There were ways to open it that would lead to the ascension chambers, and there are ways to open it that would lead to the wormholes, and it was always very testy. But at this point, the Amenti gates fell in 2003 to wormhole control, the wormhole people control, which means the dark force, whatever you want to call them. I don't like to be insulting to them, but the self-serving ones, maybe, the ones, FAs. We just use that, just, fallen angelics, whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, Giza is intense, but Giza's gate it's taken over. It's one of the Amenti ones that's taken over. And we've actually had to recently assist the Guardians in bringing a portion of the Ark of the Covenant passage, literally shifting it back using Christic Merkaba mechanics back to its old Atlantean location, which is now in the water. But it can come, there's an area where it can come down through, so we had a trip to Ireland that had to do with that.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so there is a portion of the Ark of the Covenant passage that is still secured. And that means there's a part of the race morphogenetic field that is still secured, that is not completely under control. If you read in the Voyagers books, it explains the things that are supposed to happen with the Ark of the Covenant and all of that stuff. Well, the blue flame that was coming down from Terra is now reversed, which means it's carrying the opposite, the reversed coding, which goes with the wormholes, because of what happened up in Density 2 and Density 3 in the last several years. So right now we are doing the silver flame activations, where the Guardians have pulled a portion of the race morphogenetic field, angled it, because it's still in the core, but they've angled it. So it's the passage that goes with it is no longer coming down there, so it won't receive the blue flame. It'll receive a higher level one that is called the gold and silver one flame, which is the one that actually allows the activations that will allow for the transharmonic as opposed to just harmonic activation of the fields in Ascension.
Okay.
So it's been very complex, like the dynamics.
Yeah, okay.
That,
No, but that's good. That's very good information. I do want to ask you, at some point they're talking about a Stairway to Heaven having opened up in Germany, and I'm wondering whether or not that's also a false stairway, so to speak.
I don't know, I'll ask.
Okay.
I'll set up the question, see what they say.
Yeah. I don't even know where I got that
They just
information.
commented, they said, we'll talk about that later. Remember Transylvania? Right?
Yeah, because
Oh.
it seemed like an
'Cause
unlikely place.
there's another one in Romania or something, Transylvania, that has recently been found in the last number of years. Somebody sent me a book. Yeah, Sarah sent me a book on it because she wanted me to know about that, and I asked the beloveds. And these things are I think, these are connected to the things we're going to learn about in this next workshop, that are the 12 plus 24 of the ancient Arrow sites that originally were Guardian sites, but some of which got compromised. So I wouldn't doubt that it has something to do with that, but I haven't heard anything about it yet, but that doesn't surprise me. Half the time it's like, you just heard about it, and here's the dispensation. It goes that way. So we'll see if it pops up. But, if not, I'll put it on the list of ask them about that, and if they want to comment, they will, and if not, they'll say not at this time.
I don't think that this is a positive.
Yeah.
That was my understanding, is that it's been created, actually it's been created by governments that are working with probably with the service to self group.
Yeah. That would be my gut feeling on it too.
Yeah.
But I kind of put that, I call it file 13. I won't make a judgment on it until I get, direct from them or something, yeah. But I wouldn't be too hopeful, as far as all sorts of things like that. At this point, you're just going to go, yeah, right. Here goes another, FA activation. Great, another wormhole's activated. Great, they're doing another big meditation. Oh, wonderful.
Well, and they're also, supposedly
well.
like an insider. They're selling tickets to. I mean, it's crazy. Not literally selling, but for insiders and so on and so forth. And it's just a piece of information that I got. I can't even remember where.
I remember one person who was doing these, secret, big, important meditation groups with her ET channel people, and you were required to send hair for DNA. Like I went, no thanks.
That's not a positive.
Right? Yeah. Anyway, to each his own. I'll stick with my diagrams and the Guardians. Well, we get through the structures that we were talking about in the vertical maps and look at this in terms, now this is just a black and white copy, I don't have this in color yet, but these are ones we're just actually bringing out in, we've brought out the material before, but the diagrams you could actually read because they're clear enough because they typeset them for me. This is showing the spherical map, right? And we saw the little one before that was just like a cross section, right? This is showing the spherical map. And when you look at these more closely, I'm not going to analyze this here. There's other things that, we've gone in depth, other workshops have gone in depth in these. But here's where you'd have the Van Allen belts coming in, right? So that gives you, all right, that's up in the air. Coming closer down here, this is the D2 crust. That's what we're standing on. The D2 area, we are actually in D2, right? That's the telluric realm, and that is what we perceive as solid from the state of mind, the D3 atomic level. So we always see, you see as solid, what is exactly one dimension below your state, right? And we are stuck in the D3 state because of the DNA, so we are seeing the D2 level as solid. So this is the D2 crust we're on. This is then you'd have the level of the mantles going down. You'd have the aquifers inside there. The crust level always shows up at the outer ring around the 9 level, right? And that always shows up at this point inside of one of the Cathara grids. And that applies all the way up. The mental body layer of the planet, this is the physical emotional body layer. The next one up would be the D3 grid, that's up here, and there would be the specific areas where the crust of the mental body is. Where if you went into the atomic state of matter, that would be physical to you. If you went into D4 or even density level consciousness, which is the one step up, you would see that as physically solid, right? These are reality fields that are going on around us all the time, and they are populated as well. Right? And sometimes we get visitors from them. Not all of them are positive. They started out that way, but there are these things here. 1, 2, 3, and there's actually one that runs up in here. These are net bands. We've got which one's that? The dermanet? Yeah, the D1 dermanet, which is an etheric net. That runs let me see what levels this is, because you can find exactly where they're running. Just let me find my crust again. That's the D1 crust. Sorry about that. This is D2. And this is a little bit blown up from the smaller map I was working with. Here's the D2 crust. That was the D1 crust I was showing you before. This is the D2 crust. The dermanet runs literally halfway down in the upper mantle and halfway up to the ozone layer. All right? That is one of the frequency control nets that are controlling our DNA, our minds, that we're getting broadcast. You wonder where channels get their information from. Yeah, it's the intranet, actually, and that one's up here. That's the D2 level. That's up in the atmosphere, a bit higher than the ozone. Here's the ozone layer, and here's the thermosphere area, which is the inner atmosphere below that, right? So moving upward, we have the next net, and that's the intranet, and that's where the channels get most of their broadcasts from and all of that kind of thing. They're canned broadcasts, if any of them. These, if you follow it around, where's the Van Allens? The inner Van Allen's there. So this is right in the beginning of the Van Allen gap. Right, so it's showing you. You can tell where these things are, where they're coming from. This is what the HARP stuff is all about, and various things like it. They are getting these things activated to kick them up for full throttle when they try to roll the planet. And that's what all this technology has been trying to aim for, was that final extinction, which they're not going to succeed at yet anyway. Hopefully by the time they get to around to being able to activate this Merkaba and making us extinct, we'll all be gone anyway. Right, bye. Took the spanner gates out. So up here we have, this is the one that corresponds with the next level, which is called the density grid. That's the etheric level of matter in the planes. This one is called the ego net, epigenetic overlay net. That is the one that controls the chemical sheath around the DNA that actually tells the DNA what to do. So these are the biocontrols that are being used. When we have psychotronic warfare and things like that, where we're getting zapped with stuff, I mean, these are the nets that are coming through. There's a whole other set of technologies on planet that go with this. It's called the Caduceus network, and it's a perversion of the natural structure of that figure 8 shaped Navajo gate. They've learned to tap some of the energy off those and twist them into the Caduceus shape, right, and run an artificial free energy system off it. And that's why we never got excited about the free energy system, because on the planet Earth there isn't such thing. It's siphoned energy that is being taken off the gates and helping to kill the planet more quickly because of the distortions on the planet. So there's a whole bunch of information that we were shown about how these systems work, what the planet should look like, what the planes should like. We end up with more planes than we should have, because they're split. These nets actually split the natural planes, which means you end up with a regular one and a reversed one. The reversed ones are called hibernation zones, where literally whatever quantum of matter was there, it was put on reverse spin, so it disappears from here. It's not there anymore, right? It went somewhere. It's in the same place, but it's on opposite spin, so it appears invisible. This is where you have places like Shambhala, Eartha, all the other little channel control matrices that have been working wormhole systems in interacting and controlling here. Olympus was another one, yeah. So all of these things, when they started showing us this, it was just like, oh my God, right? Right, that kind of thing, you know? It was heartbreaking. I was quite just bummed out about it, but also excited about understanding the planes. And of course, they never tell us anything that's really, really depressing unless they first give us the antidote. They're really good with that. They'll usually tell you the good stuff first and then show you what needs to be done. And you go, oh, okay, and then, oh, by the way, and that's because of this. You gotta go, oh, yuck.
So
you know, where you might go, and not even pay attention enough to learn the good part if they showed you all of the negatives first.
But what's happening with those groups is that you've got their energies going into those particular grids and being siphoned off, in essence.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they're also being used as beacons to send energy in to the remaining grids here to control them. The people don't know they're being used that way. They're being used as energy conduits to help literally pull the planet into a black hole. And that's really sad, because most of the people who are being used in that way, it would be the last thing in the world they would want.
Right.
You know, because they mean the opposite, and that's really sad. But there's also a lot of the people in those groups that are actually incarnated out of the soul, the FA soul groups. Mm-hmm. And some of them, once a being incarnates, though, it has free will, even if it's out of a non-free will matrix. Mm-hmm. Which is always a risk. When the FA groups decide they're going to incarnate and put their little soldiers on the planet, their soldiers might rebel when they realize, hey, we can make better choices. But they still have the DNA link, where they'll have a fight in their head. You know, one part of them pulling them this way, the other part that way. It's really, really difficult for people who are born with greater degrees of Illuminati gene code, because the Illuminati gene code is what plugs into the FA matrices. Mm-hmm. And nobody ever comes in alone here. We all have... Yeah, we came from someplace, and we all have family groups and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And if you happen to be out of an Illuminati family group that's a control matrix that doesn't give you free will and that kind of stuff, they will give you a hard time if you try to escape from them here, but that doesn't mean you can't, mm-hmm. because you can. And there are certain things you can learn to do with your bioenergetic, I'm talking so fast, I'm tripping, with your bioenergetic field that will allow you to slow down their ability to push you, and to make sure they don't come in your body and just take you over and that kind of stuff, because they can do that. And it's a pretty standard way of how Illuminati deal with their, renegades. They don't give them a chance to be renegades. So anyway, these planes are here, but they're the negative ones. The positive ones are here. There are these aurora platforms that connect into the aurora continuum. And we've been progressively giving technologies and techniques to work with our biofields and, in our bodies and our various levels of our bodies to bring in the currents that will allow us to begin to be able to go into these spaces, or actually more so open up these spaces where they're in the same place as the other spaces, but you could have two people standing next to each other, one activated to this time wave and one to that, and they'll see completely two different things. Right now, we're all seeing the same thing because we're all stuck in the time wave that's being run by the Metatronic clock down here. As soon as this other time wave starts coming in, there will be another option. And if we work with technologies that bring that other time wave into our bodies, that's why they give us techniques. I mean, every workshop, there's tons of techniques. We must have thousands of techniques by now, I think. You know, to progressively help to fix this part of the light body, then this part, piece by piece. We've been putting ourselves back together, you know. But eventually what this will look like, what slide will look like, is you'll have yourself activated to a certain level, and you will see a gate, and the person next to you won't even see it. You'll walk through it, and you'll disappear, and they won't know why. That kind of thing. And you'll end up where you would, there's a place they're going to have that's actually called the mirror ball zone that we're going to learn about in this coming workshop, and I just know a little bit about it, but enough to know what its end result is going to be. There's going to be a place with the higher earth planes that we've talked about that are invisible to us right now because they're on the other side of the nets. They're free from the nets, and we just don't see those matter layers because of the nets. There's going to be a place where part of those planes blend with part of our planes, and there's going to be a blend field, and if you have the activated blended time wave, you will be able to see both and switch between them, which means you would be able to slide from one reality field to another. And that is the first step in ascension from here. The next step would be getting to the point where you could make it permanent. Because as long as your body is still partially running the time wave here, which means as long as you still have that cell donated by the piece of cell from your mother and your father, as long as that cell is still there and not released, you will be bound to the time frame of the planet in which that conception occurred. Right? So first we learn to slide, and then we learn to span, which is do the transfiguration and free that. So we are literally free to go into the living universe through the ascension passages. And that's what we're working on. It's the real deal. And I know it is. I remember teaching this in Egypt. I remember teaching this in India. I remember teaching this in Atlantis and in Lemuria and on Procyon. And you know, it's the same thing we've been teaching over and over and over. It's the same thing that Jeshua tried to teach back then in the Jesus period. That was the person they call Jesus in these days. It was the same thing that before him, there were people in India that were trying to teach. These are the teachings. They belong to everyone. There's not one religion that they're a part of. They're the original legions of the Christ, which were the original, not just the CDD plates. The CDD plates themselves were just one part of the translation of the universal knowledge. There's a higher level of those plates that are called the something or other Alhambra plates that are from M31, the Alhambra plates. And they're crystal discs, actually. They're just starting to release information from those. When the solar crisis happened and it went into evac, they started bringing in the higher level information that had to do with the spanners, gates, and all of that stuff, because you weren't going to get out on the regular level of vertical ascension. You had to do the go in between in the Aurora zone.